Found on the High Seas, a serialized gay romance taking place aboard the Caribbean ocean liner, the Majestic Sun. Follow along as I take everyone on a Caribbean adventure with humor, love, and of course, destruction. Penned by Riley Mason, narrated by me, Brian Shepard. Episode 4, Empress of Britain. On the Bridge of the Sun, it was total chaos, as reports were pouring in about a natural disaster that had happened in Colombia. The city of Cartagena was hit by an earthquake, registering 10.2 on the Richter scale. Cartagena has a population of 1.4 million residents. Britain and his team were already in the lobby, recalling all passengers. Now that the island had declared an emergency, tourists had no choice but to return, as tours and shops were closed or closing. A head count was already underway for all employees and extra guests that have joined thanks to the wedding, while Britain and his team counted passengers on board and as they checked back in. Passengers were worried as they watched various news feeds on their cell phones. The shock and horror that rocked Cartagena was disastrous. Over 70,000 people were already confirmed dead, while many more were still missing. The quake was so powerful it did structural damage to the Panama Canal, ceasing operations. The weather was already turning ugly due to a storm that was due to roll through before they left port. Yet now they might have to sail through it. A radio call came through, and the management team was to report to the bridge for a briefing. Britain was already nervous, as he has never been through a storm or emergency before while on a ship. So many questions were going through his mind as he made his way, meeting up with Riley just outside the door. A half smile is all Riley saw in Britain's face when he came around the corner. Not the usual big bright smile he was getting used to. He could tell that Britain was nervous, as he should be. Riley keeps a mental note of the fact that Britain has never been on a ship, so of course he's going to be worried. Who wouldn't? A natural disaster causing death and destruction happens, and on your first sailing. We don't have a lot of time, so I'll get to it now that we're all here, Jericho continued. All passengers and crew have been accounted for. Captain Moore has returned to the seas and will be underway as soon as we are ready. All Majestic ships have been recalled or rerouted, as the Caribbean Sea is off limits. The company's main focus is us getting our passengers out and away from danger, which is my main goal as well, Jericho stated. Yet a hand went up. What danger are they worried about? Britain asked, confused. Yes, it was an earthquake, that he knew, but how does that affect them? They were docked at Jamaica, far away from the shores of Cartagena. A tsunami warning has been issued, and we will be sailing into some choppy waters as the storm I was hoping to sit through will be out there right along with us. So I also will need the ship to be locked up tight. In other words, batten down the hatches, folks. It's going to be a wet and bumpy ride, Jericho finished. From there, everyone filed off the bridge to return to their departments and prepare the ship to get underway. Riley had suggested that outdoor activities be restricted. However, entertainment and dining would remain open for now. Passengers would most likely go crazy if they were cooped up in their cabins. He doubted many would venture around the ship if the sea was to be as rough as Jericho said it could be. He and his team would also be busy removing all deck furniture and decor from the tiki pool area, bow and stern. Benches and most lounging chairs were bolted down, so no need to worry about them. Just the new cushions. You don't want them flying away in the wind. The engine room crew would also be busy little bees, making sure that the engines are running smoothly, the ship remains watertight, and the lights continue to burn bright. Hospitality would make sure that passengers remained comfortable, as the rough weather would not be so kind to some. The doctor was already anticipating many calls for seasickness. The plan was simple. Well, according to those who understood it. Yet from what Britain was understanding was that both ships would sail in tandem, making sure they stay within deep water. If there was to be a tsunami, the ship would be less impacted. Britain and Riley, please report back to the bridge. Captain Jericho called over the radio. Britain excused himself while Morgan and Emily finished up with the guests that were late checking back in from a tour. All this back and forth between the lobby and the bridge will keep him slim and not afraid to indulge in the lemon drop cheesecake they serve in the dining room. Riley was already on the bridge and waiting for him, it would seem. Ah, you're here. So, I have a task for the two of you, which includes a temporary transfer until we dock at our rendezvous port, Jericho said. Oh? What is the transfer? To the seas? Riley asked. No, it would seem the company just acquired another ship, which is docked here. The company is requesting a few crew members be on board during the sailing. There is only one passenger, a Mr. Keith Merriweather, who happens to be a Majestic representative. There is just the bridge and engine crew. Sounds good to me. I can have my shifts covered for the time being. Riley? There's no way that Riley was going to let Britain out of his sight. Yes, of course, Captain. We will disembark as soon as possible. Do we know which ship? He asked, as he could also see Britain smile out of the corner of his eye. Captain Jericho pointed to an older ship, which was docked at the end of the pier. The ship looked like it had seen better days, almost like it had been sitting there for years. Yes, the Topaz, commanded by Captain Robert Schmidt. This will be his last sailing as he's retiring, finally. I will radio over and let him know. Thank you, and we'll see you both back on board when this is over. Captain, the Seas is underway and heading out. We have clearance to get underway. The staff captain cut in. As soon as my crew are on the Topaz, we'll be underway, Jericho answered as both Britain and Riley left the bridge. Both already had what they needed and were ready to walk off the ship and down the pier to the Topaz. A ship which is a bit longer than the sun. A member of the crew met them on board as the gangway was moved away from the ship, signaling that they too were ready to leave port. The sun began its journey away from the dock and headed into the same direction as the Seas. Topaz would do the same. Every ship was to stay within deep water while also staying together in case there was an emergency. On board the Topaz, it was pretty much the same layout as the Sun, so it would be easy to navigate the ship. Their sleeping quarters were still on the bottom deck of the ship as the crewmen walked them down the hallway. Is there a reason why we could not just have stayed in the empty cabins above? Riley asked as they stopped in front of the door. Sorry, sir, but the rooms have been gutted in preparation to renovate the ship. Your fella in the suit is in the room at the end of the hall here, the crewman said as he pointed down to the left. He was 5 doors down. Sorry, I'm Riley, and this is Britain, extending his hand. Owen, sir. I work in the kitchen. Oh, and I will be serving dinner in the crew galley around 6, which is 1 deck below us. Nothing fancy, I'm afraid. All right, well, I'll let you two get settled, and I'll see you then. And off he went. The cabin contained a double bunk, desk and chair, cabinet for clothes, and a bathroom. Pictures of a ship in dusty frames hung on the wall, along with posters advertising the ship's destinations back in the day. The Topaz has a very long history, as whoever occupied this cabin was really into the history of the ship, as the pictures across the room pretty much told the story. Britain would soon realize that he was on a ship that was formerly the RMS Empress of Britain. Empress of Britain was built by Fairfield Shipbuilding in Govan near Glasgow, Scotland. She was christened on the 22nd of June in 1955 by H.M. Queen Elizabeth II. This was nearly 50 years after the first Empress of Britain was launched from Govan in November of 1905. 11 months later, she set out on maiden voyage from Liverpool to Montreal, leaving Liverpool in April of 1956. This 25,516-ton vessel had a length of 640 feet, and her beam was 85.2 feet. The ship had 1 funnel, which at one point was blue in color. However, the sun has since faded it. 1 mast, twin propellers at an average speed of 20 knots. The ocean liner provided accommodation for 160 first-class passengers and for 984 tourist-class passengers. Over the years, like most ships, still seaworthy would be retrofitted, remodeled, and of course renamed. Queen Anna Maria, Fiesta Maria, Carnival, and of course, Olympic. In 1997, the former Olympic was sold to Cyprus-based Thomas Holidays, and the ship was renamed the Topaz. In 2003, the vessel was chartered and then later sold to Topaz International to sail for Peace Boat operating under the name Peace Boat. She was repainted with white, with a blue funnel, and her name painted in large letters across both sides of the hull. In October of 2005, the Topaz was inspected and found to be in immaculate condition, the steam turbine engines operating flawlessly. Topaz International were looking for a buyer for the Topaz, and they had maintained the ship in excellent condition. It was hoped that a buyer could be found, as the Topaz offered any potential buyer the opportunity of a ready-to-work ship. However, rising oil prices combined with inefficient 50-year-old engines proved too much for any potential buyer. In April of 2008, The Topaz was retired from the Peace Boat organization and remained docked in Montego Bay after a private buyer purchased it with the intent of turning it into a floating hotel. Plans would fall through, and the Topaz would sit for years until it was recently bought by Majestic. An inspection of the Topaz was conducted in preparation of the takeover, and the fact that it would sail back to Scotland, where it would go through yet another transformation and a rename, most likely. Surprisingly, the ship passed, giving permission for it to set sail. A representative would remain on board during the sailing. Those plans were now scrapped due to an emergency. They would file the others out to the deep water and then back up towards Florida. We should go up to the bridge and check in with the captain and talk with the rep and see if they need anything, Riley said as they both noticed and felt the ship moving. They were underway, hopefully out of danger, as the risk of a tsunami was still a real threat. Thanks for listening, everyone, and thank you for the support. Happy holidays and Happy New Year, and episode 5 will be waiting for you.